Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel. I have a lot of repotting to do. I've been waiting for the big Texas storm to kind of pass so I can repot my plants and not have them go into shock, first of all from the freeze that happened, and second of all from finding themselves into a bigger pot. You're really supposed to wait until spring to repot your plants, just because plants tend to kind of go into a semi-dormant state, if not a full dormant state during the winter. So I've been holding out, but I've noticed a lot of my plants needing an upgrade in pots. So I'm going to do a load of those today, and I'm going to show you the signs to look for when your plant might need repotting, and just, you know, the telltale signs that it needs a bigger size pot. So let's hop into it. So first I'm going to show you one of the most common signs that your plant needs a bigger pot, and I'm going to take off my ring and stuff like that to do this because your hands are going to get dirty with stuff like this. So I've had this Monstera for about a couple months now, and it's in a tiny little 4-inch pot, and you usually don't find Monsteras in 4-inch pots just because, well, first of all, they outgrow them so quickly, but they usually just aren't sold that way because people like to see, like, you know, the little slits in the leaf and all that. But this one is in the most shallow 4-inch pot that you've ever seen. And you can even see up here, you can even see this root right here is starting to come up the top. And that is already a sign that it needs to be replanted into a bigger pot. But then if I try not to make a mess here, but if I take this plant out of its pot, you can see all of these roots down here at the bottom have been swirling around the bottom of the pot. And this isn't the worst root bound plant I've seen. I've definitely seen some with roots going all the way up the entire like base where the soil is. But this definitely needs to be repotted because the roots are just so tightly packed in there. And then also when I first got this plant, I was getting quite a lot of new growth out of it pretty consistently. I was getting maybe like, you know, a new leaf every month or so. And I've just noticed the growth has completely slowed, and I think there's like a tiny new leaf coming in down here, but that's really it. And I've lost actually a couple of leaves. You can see like a couple of spots that I've cut because some leaves have just been super droopy and like have gone yellow. And that's also a sign that your plant needs a bigger pot if there's nothing else, you know, going on with it, if you haven't been overwatering it and stuff like that. So I definitely need to repot him into a bigger size pot. I'm thinking I don't want to go fully to a 6-inch pot just because it's so much bigger than this one. I might go into a full size 4-inch pot just to give it a bit more time, and because I have 4-inch pots here, and it will probably need to be repotted again soon, like after I make that jump up to the bigger 4-inch pot, but it will at least buy me some time for sure. I actually have another plant that is pretty much the same exact example as that Monstera. This one, for people who have been around plants and know plants, you're gonna know right as soon as you see this that it needs a bigger pot, and that is my philodendron Birkin that is in this 4-inch pot. And this, just when you look at it, it has way too many leaves and it's way too spread out to be a philodendron in this size pot. You can just, without even looking at the roots, you can tell this is going to be root bound, and it's going to have like a ton of roots kind of just fighting to make their way out. And same thing with this one, the growth has really slowed. It's still putting out leaves, but as you can see with this newest leaf here, they're just kind of small and they're not really like putting out big leaves like it was when it put out, you know, its first variegated leaf, and all that sort of stuff. So this definitely is going to be needing a repot soon. If I take it out of its pot, it's the same exact thing. You can see, if I get this close enough, you can see all these roots. And like I said, these aren't like severely root bound. Just, you know, you can always see worse in like spider plants especially. But it's just the roots are circling around the bottom of the pot and all up the sides of it. And this just desperately has been needing a repot for quite a while, actually. I've just kind of been postponing it, like I said, because the weather hasn't been good for it. But I'm biting the bullet and repotting a lot of these quite soon. Now I'm going to show you an example of a pot that needs to be repotted into a smaller pot, and this is kind of more of a trial and error type thing. But I have this philodendron Macaulay's finale, and there's actually a spider living on it right now, which is good because it eats all the bad bugs that are there, so I've just kind of let him be. But as you can see, I've chopped him down quite a bit with like the dead bits of the leaves and all that sort of stuff. So he's been struggling for a long time. He's had this new shoot right here, and it's been a new shoot basically since I got him. And it really hasn't grown very much. So I am guessing, and I haven't taken a look at the roots yet, but I'm willing to bet that the root system is very, very small, and it was probably repotted into a pot way too big for it way too soon, and it might have even been overwatered. And yeah, just all of that stuff put together means that it probably is in a pot way too big for it and probably just drowning every time that you go to water it. So I think that if I repot that into a 4-inch pot, it's going to give the roots a lot more chance to like grab onto the soil and to actually thrive and actually start growing. So yeah, I'm gonna be repotting that one today, and then I have actually 2 plants that I want to put together into the same pot, and these ones aren't root bound at all. I just barely got them, and they're doing totally fine, but I want to put them together and make 2 plants, and they're both in 4-inch. Let me just show you. So I have 2 of these. They're the exact same, basically Maranta Calatheas, I think. I don't know. I think they're just Marantas, but I'm not sure. But I think they're in the prayer plant group. And I've had them before. I just got rid of them when I did that big move, as I mentioned in my last video. But I have 2 of these that are the exact same size, and I'm wanting to put them together to just make a big fuller plant. So I'm going to be transferring them into the 6-inch pot that my Philodendron Macaulay's Finale is in right now. So we're going to be doing that today. Let's get into it. So usually when I repot my plants, I like to do it outside. That way, if anything gets dirty or soil gets everywhere, I can just sweep it off my balcony to the floor. But I have to be inside today because it's really cold and rainy and gloomy. So I'm going to be using this massive tub to catch just basically all the soil and just all the stuff that I would have been sweeping up, and that way we don't make a massive mess. So that's just what I use to kind of be a little portable like greenhouse table, because I don't have one. Living in a 1-bedroom apartment, I don't have the means for that right now. I'm just looking around this philodendron, making sure that the spider's not going to be crawling on my hand anywhere, because although I'm very happy that he's here, I do not want him to crawl on me, just because you can still be afraid of spiders but want them for your plants. So it's looking like he's not even here, and he probably hasn't been here for a while. I only saw him once. So when I go to repot plant, I usually wait until it needs a new, like until the next watering. So wait until the soil's basically bone dry, because I always like to water the plant again when I repot it into new soil. And that's quite hard to do if you don't have, you know, dry soil to work with. Otherwise your plant's gonna basically be waterlogged and it might damage the roots more than help it, which is kind of counterintuitive with your repotting the plant. So wait until it's bone dry and then you can go and repot it. So that's what I'm doing today. So what we're gonna do is, oh my goodness, see, and it just literally picked right up from the soil. Yeah, that's I wasn't expecting quite that bad of a root system. And it's literally just completely dry. This is like a little reaction fun video as well, geez. So as you can see, the root system is no bigger than my hand, and that's definitely going to be drowning in a 6-inch pot. So yeah, that's what we're working with here. And I guess we just have a full pot of soil that didn't even take any soil with it. It just completely all dropped off. So when you're going to repot these, you're gonna want to get, if the roots are kind of like all bunched up, and I'm sure you've seen them before, sometimes the roots get super bunched up together and it's to the point where you can't even really like tear through them without actually tearing the roots. If you do that, don't worry, it's okay. Roots are very good at growing back as long as you just don't rip off all of them. But I like to get about as much soil as I can off of the actual roots, and just break them up as much as I can. In cases where the roots are actually properly, whether, you know, like it's got root rot and stuff like that, I usually go in and rinse the plant under some water to get all of the soil off, because then I can kind of start more fresh and, you know, treat the roots if I need to, if there's like a fungus on there. But when the roots are this dry, it's really just a case of you know, taken the soil off and trying to break it up as much as possible. But when I tell you these roots feel dry, it's really bad. So these philodendrons have like a stalk right here. So I think I'm gonna take these bottom 2 leaves off so I can create more of a stalk to plant underneath the soil to kind of get a more like stronger hold, because it clearly didn't have much of a hold with just the roots in the last pot. And this will hopefully give it just like a better chance of holding into that and like really, you know, kind of taking to the soil a bit more. So let's grab the new pot. So this is the 4-inch pot that I'm going to be planting it in. As you can see, it's like, that's going to fit perfectly in there. And I hope that he'll be happier in there. But just time will tell, I guess. So like I said, I'm going to break off those bottom 2 leaves. And I'm going to use the same soil that this was in already, because I know that philodendron have a particular, like, they like the soil to be a certain kind of texture, and I think this is quite a chunky soil, so it should work quite well. As you can see, there's a lot of just chunks in it. Like, I don't know the exact name of everything just because I've never been super into like my own soil mixes and all that. But it seems like a good enough soil. So I just poured out the soil and it is very like damp at the bottom, which means that this philodendron was probably drowning, and it might have even had bigger roots, but they were way too waterlogged, and it probably led a lot of the roots to just completely be rotted away. What I'm gonna do is I'm going to, first I like to put a little bit of soil into the pot, and you'll see it like come off the bottom, but that's just to kind of give a barrier between the roots and the bottom. Nothing really like too scientific about that, it's just a personal preference. And then I'll go to put the plant in, and whether or not like it's too close to the top, I kind of want it to sit like, so, you know, it's not like right at the top where the roots are, they're like more submerged, if you will. So I usually just hold it with my fingers and then pour some in and then kind of just cover it that way. Nothing really like fancy about my technique at all. So I've poured a lot of the soil in, and then I just kind of move it around and get it all in there. And I go and pack it down a bit, just because I know you don't want like super tightly packed soil. You want it to be aerated and you want there to be like a looseness to it. But because this plant has had such a hard time like staying in the soil, and it lifted so easily from the last pot, that tells me that it needs a bit more firm of a hold. And it's not like, you know, I'm not going crazy like pushing it down to the point where it's like solid and you can't even get like a toothpick through it or something, but kind of just more so to settle it in there. And what I'm doing now is I'm just putting more into the side right here and then moving it around the other sides with my hands, because it's kind of just hard to keep rotating it and doing that sort of stuff. It's just a bit of a pain. Okay, so there we have it. He's completely planted in there, and I just kind of give this one in particular a bit of a wobble test to see if he's like very securely in his pot. So if we shake him just a bit, he'll like wobble just because he does, because he's on that one little spike, which is the stem. But he's not like wobbling to the point where he's like gonna fall out of his pot if you turn him to the side, which is what I was going for, because obviously he was not very firmly in his last pot. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm going to just take one of these little trays, fill them with water, and then put him in there to soak up some water from the bottom, which is how I water most of my plants. And that way the soil kind of sets a bit, and then he gets a good watering in too, because like I said, he was already at that point where he needed a little bit of a watering. And then after that's done, I'm going to clean his leaves off and put him in his new cash pot and then stick him in the sun. Now, like I said, what I'm going to do with the new 6-inch nursery pot that I have is I'm going to take this calathea that I have and this calathea, and I'm going to pot them together so it's a nice full plant. Obviously that side wasn't seeing the sun today, but put them together so they're a nice full plant just in that pot together. I am probably going to hold off a couple more days to do that, just because these are still quite wet from the nursery when I got them. And I definitely don't want to be hurting the root system on these. That aside, actually, if you look at the bottom of this calathea right here, you can see some of the roots actually sticking out a bit from the holes on the nursery pot, and that is probably saying that this calathea is root bound as well. So let's actually check that out. So if a plant and pot have been, you know, in the same spot for a while and it hasn't been repotted recently, you might have to like squeeze the pot sides a bit to break up the soil to kind of be able to get it out, just because you don't want to be breaking any leaves or anything. So just gently, I just really don't want to break anything. Okay, so here is what we're dealing with. So you can see all these roots here on the bottom. It's not like super bad on the sides, but on the bottom for sure it's getting there, which is kind of like the start of it, but you still like have another like 6 months easily till you have to repot it, until it starts like not liking being in that pot. But like I said, they seem fine in their current pots and the soil is quite damp. So I'm going to leave it until the soil dries out and I get to my next watering, because I do not want to kill those plants. I'll show you actually a plant that I repotted recently. It was actually in that pot that we just planted our philodendron. That was its old pot, and that is my Scindapsus exotica, and it is now in a 6-inch pot, but these like 3 leaves in the front are completely new leaves, and they just put out like 3 other new leaves this week. And I mean, it's already growing another root at the bottom here. So this is a really fast grower for me. And it was in its 4-inch nursery pot since the day I got it. And it was just way too big for it. And the way that I could tell before even like checking out the roots or anything like that is it would dry out way too quickly in between waterings. I would water it one day and then like 2 days later, it would need another watering, and it was in the dead of winter. So I knew that something was wrong and something was not completely right. And then a lot of these bottom leaves would just stay like curled all the time, even after I watered it, even when it was getting like prime conditions. They would just randomly have leaves curling, and there was no new growth coming out either. And the new growth that did come out was like very small in comparison to like some of the other leaves. So you can see like how small this one is in comparison to like this one back here, or like even this one. So I just knew that it needed to be repotted, and ever since it did, it's been perfectly fine. I've watered it maybe twice, and it's starting to try to vine a bit, but I mean, it's done it a lot of good. So you can just see how nice it is for some plants to be repotted like when they need it, and they will tell you when they need it. So that was all I had for you guys for this video today. I'm gonna go wash my hands and clean up that plant that we repotted. I hope that this was helpful for you, and I hope that, you know, next time your plants need to be repotted, you can easily tell the signs and get it the bigger pot that it needs. Thanks for watching, guys. I'll see you later.